Alright, welcome everybody. We'll get started in just a minute here. Today we are doing beyond the traditional camera. Let me pull that up for us. We'll get started in about 4 minutes here. About 4 minutes, everybody. Couple more minutes, everybody, and then we'll get started. Alright, about a minute. Let's just get kind of jumping into it. So, welcome everybody to another camera class. My name is Saxon. I'm your host. Today we'll be going through beyond the traditional camera. The idea of this class is that we're trying to give you guys another look into cameras that isn't just your standard mirrorless or DSLR camera. This is a chance for you to learn about something that's a little bit different, like drones, GoPros, camcorders, 360 cameras, action cameras, kind of the entirety of the lineup of cameras that doesn't consist of mirrorless or DSLR. So, without further ado, why do we advance past our cameras? So really we're looking at a couple different reasons for why we might want to invest in something like this. We're talking about new gear that can add something to our camera arsenal, if we will. So portability and travel, I think, is one of the most important factors of this whole thing. The amount of these cameras are going to be very small, tiny. They're going to be easy to carry around with you and take places. And on top of that, too, they're pretty simple in design when you look at it. Most of these cameras have very easy to use controls, which makes them just super easy to take out with us and use pretty much anywhere. So with that being said, portability and travel, I think, is the most important part. Durability is a big factor too. Most of these cameras are waterproof. Things like the things like the GoPros or the action cameras can go usually about 30 feet underwater. As well as the drones too, having that flight capability. They do withstand bumps and nicks here and there. So overall too, those offer a good amount of durability Weatherproofing's a big portion of this too. You know, when we look at things like the action cameras, not only can they go underwater, but they can get rained on. Same thing with your drones or 360 cameras. Recording time is a big factor in this one. Mirrorless and DSLR cameras now have come a long way as far as recording length, ability to not start and stop every 30 minutes, stuff like that, right? Well, in that same kind of boat, the recording time on these smaller cameras is really great too. Things like GoPro, the 360 cameras, camcorders really keep going until your battery dies out on you. So as long as you have, you know, extra batteries or a charger with you, for the most part, you're going to be able to get any length of recording time that you want. And then the ability to fly or record over great distances. When it comes to things like the drones, the fact that you can fly and have a 3 mile to 4 mile to 2 mile transmission between the controller and your drone is really impressive. So you can move that thing, go really anywhere that you want with it while still getting the video and the recording in through the actual system itself. So super easy and reliable there too. So really, what are we looking at when we advance past our regular mirrorless or DSLR camera? We're looking at a couple different points that could really add to our arsenal, give us the ability to reach new heights and try and maybe even get videos that we wouldn't be able to get in other situations. First thing we want to talk about, much like our intro class, is where our pictures go, and we want to make sure we have 2 of these. SD cards are going to be a huge part of our photo taking journey. They are the vehicle that drives basically between your camera and your computer. The SD card is what's saving all your information, and those SD cards have small copper contact strips on the very back of them. That being said, that when they're taken in and out of the camera after periods and periods of time, they can start to lose their control. And if that's the case, we want to make sure we have an additional SD card before we go out on a job or we go do things. Reason being is that if for any reason our SD card dies on us while we're shooting, we at least have a backup that now we can store and save our information to. It would be a real big shame if you go someplace and you're ready to take photos or videos, and the second that you start trying to do so, you lose or you aren't able to save your information on there. So first thing I always tell people is that we want to make sure we invest in SD cards, and we want to make sure we at least have 2 of them, just in case something goes wrong with one. At least we have a backup to the other. I think the same thing can be said for batteries as well too. If we're using a camera that involves batteries, not a rechargeable internal battery, but batteries we can physically remove, it's not a bad idea to have 2 of them at all times, just to make sure you keep a charge on your device at all times. So micro SD cards. That's going to be the big one that we're looking at now. Now if we're using a regular camcorder, a standard SD card would probably be preferable. But when it comes to things like the Insta360, the action cameras like GoPro DJI, also Insta360, the drones from DJI, those are all going to require a micro SD card. Now, some cameras will have some or no internal storage. Now, I put that in bold, capital letters, and I underlined it. It's important that we not rely on that internal storage that comes with our camera. While that's great and helpful, a lot of the times it only offers you about 8 gigabytes worth of storage. Now something like the Insta360 Go 3, that will have about 64 gigabytes of internal storage on there. So you probably could get away with not having any card for that. And I believe they don't even allow for a card to fit into the camera. However, if you're using a drone, you're only going to get 8 gigabytes worth of storage space on there. If that is 4K video at 60 frames a second, you're probably only going to get about 14 to 15 minutes worth of footage on there. That might be enough for some people, but for most, if you're looking to record a great amount of content, then you're going to want to make sure you have something that has at least something with 64 gigabytes at the minimum, or higher is always going to be better. More storage over less storage, even if you don't need it, is always going to be more preferred. And not only do we want to make sure we have that, but we want to get something with a good read and write speed. Now, I would say that a good read and write speed at the entry level, especially for 4K video and for the higher end quality video, you want to make sure that it's at least around 80 megabytes a second. If you're around that 80 megabytes a second for the read and write speed, then you've got a really nice speed overall for the device that you're looking for. And that means that when the video is getting processed, as in read by the card and then written by the card, it's going to go a lot faster, and it's going to ensure that your video gets saved with the best quality possible too. So read and write speed is important for a few different reasons, but the main takeaway from that is by choosing a card with a better read and write speed, you're guaranteeing faster transfer and more reliable transfer. So again, things to keep in mind. Micro SD cards are the name of the game. Your device is going to have some to no internal storage, so make sure you have a card. Make sure it's at a good read and write speed, so around that 80 megabytes a second. And anything with 64 gigabytes or higher is always going to be more better, if you will. Now, the pictures and videos should never live on your memory card. I put that in quotations because some people do have a method of saving all the information to their memory cards, downloading everything onto the computer, but then keeping everything saved on the memory cards just in case something were to go wrong. I don't disagree with that, but I don't preferably like that. I think that your photos should live on your computer and the secondary source, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But the first steps that we can do in order to make sure we transfer everything properly and appropriately is let's start with one by landing the drone and turning off the camera unit. I think this is the most important part of this because we want to make sure that our drone or our camera or whatever we're using has properly turned off and saved the information the correct way. So it's important that we never just remove the card right away before turning it off or stopping use of the product, because there's a chance that the video and the files that it's saving are not completely done yet. And if that's the case, then there is a chance that we could lose all of the information that we just got. We're going to wait at least 5 seconds once we've turned that drone off. This gives it a chance to cool down, to turn off for a little bit, just to ensure that, again, all the information that's being saved is properly saved and is done. Then we're going to remove that card and place the card into a reader, and place it to a card reader. Now, I recommend this, removing the card and then placing it into a reader. The best practice is to remove the card, try to avoid using the camera to send pics to and from. So in this thought process, a lot of these devices, DJI, Insta360, GoPro, even Sony with the camcorders or Canon, they have apps that you can download, and then that allows you to download and transfer all of your content from camera to phone pretty easily, or camera to tablet. My only hesitation with this is that sometimes you can diminish the quality of the whatever it is that you're recording. If that's the case, by diminishing the quality, we're running the risk of now not having that premium video that we just shot and took care of. So, best practice, remove the card, insert it into the computer, and download that way. If you're in a pinch, you've got maybe a video or two, you'd like to send those to friends or show them off, then by all means transfer the information via your phone or tablet. However, don't be surprised if it doesn't look the same way it did on the camera itself. These are examples of good card readers. Again, get whatever's in your budget, whatever you can afford on this case. I personally like the trifecta reader right there from ProMaster. It has a spot for both micro SD and standard SD card, and it fits both USB and USB-C. So really it hits at both the main shapes that you're going to need to worry about when transferring all the information. And it's really easy to kind of just go to and from. So that's my personal pick there. However, though, you've got tons of different card readers out there, so get whatever is best suited for you. The one on the left by ProMaster has the charging hub on there, so you can actually charge 3 devices while it's plugged into your computer. So if you're limited on, USB ports or plugins on your computer, that's a really nice option. If you're using faster cards like CF Express or Velocity cards, things like the Sony or the Velocity Cinething from ProMaster are also great options too. It helps you transfer a little bit quicker. Now, once we've plugged into the computer and we've got the card going through the card reader, we want to create a new destination folder. Now, the destination folder or folder on your computer can be labeled whatever is easiest for your filing needs. I personally like to label the month, the date, and the year that I went to whatever the event is, plus the event itself, so I know. I categorize all my photos and videos through a system where I basically go by the year, by the month, and then within each month's folder, I then have all the information ready to go. This makes it easy for me, and that's how I prefer to do it. However, everyone's a little different, and they all save their photos or their information in ways that work best for them. So whatever your main method of file saving and sharing is, I would definitely go that route. The next thing you're going to do is copy the photos from your camera or from your SD card to the destination folder that you made. Now I always say copy and not to move, because if we duplicate the photos from the card to the computer, if for any reason something gets unplugged or disturbed during that transfer, they were copying over from one source to the other, which should hopefully then in turn prevent us from having an accident where we lose everything from that. So best move is always to copy, not to move them. If you're using Windows, it'll be the Explorer icon, and if you're using Mac, it'll be the Finder icon when you plug in that SD card and you start transferring over from one to the other and copying your information. Now, once we've copied them onto the computer, we want to copy those to a second place. And my recommendations for that can be an external hard drive, something like Google Photos or Prime Photos. Again, the idea is that we're saving them to not only just our computer, but to a backup source, like a hard drive or like a cloud-based solution. The next step in that is then going to be to eject the card before physically removing it. We never want to just unplug the card from the computer. We run the risk of losing all the information or not allowing the transfer to be complete in the way that we want it to be. So we want to make sure that we eject the card by either dragging it over to the trash icon or left-clicking on the item and then allowing it to eject. This will make sure that it shuts the card down, it finishes up whatever it was doing, and then prepares us for the next step of then exiting the card from the computer and closing out of the programs that it was just using. Now the next step in this whole thing is going to be to format the card. Now, for a lot of people, we're only using one camera. It's not necessary to format the card every single time if we're using it in the same camera. The reason we format the card is for two reasons. One, if we format the card in the camera, we can erase all the information from the card without necessarily having to go click and drag to the trash can. We can go that route, and that's totally fine too. But for best practice and ease of use, easiest thing is going to be to format the card in the camera, allowing for all the information to be erased. The second thing with formatting a card is that we set the card so that way it's specifically set and ready to go for the camera that we're using. So if we're using a Nikon and we format a Nikon camera, then that's going to make sure that when we shoot on that camera, we're getting the most optimized photo and video for the camera at large. If we don't do it that way, and let's say we go from Canon to Nikon, we've deleted everything on the computer, and we didn't format in the camera, all we're doing is preventing ourselves from taking full advantage of the card. That could be an extra 30 minutes of video. That could be an extra 100 photos that now we don't have access to. That could just be saving it at the highest quality possible with no disruption. There's a lot of things that can go into that. So make sure you format the card at least once inside the camera that you'll be shooting on, if that's the only camera. And as far as deleting the information, make sure that you delete usually after every shot. And I again would recommend using the format feature in the card or in the camera. So next step, or this is going to be your backup, if I can. So we start with the SD card. That's where the information is being saved. From there, it goes into the computer. Once it's into the computer, we can download all the information and copy it onto the computer. Again, not moving it, but copying it. From there, we can then save it onto one of two options: a physical hard drive, which is my preferred method, or a cloud-based solution. Both are completely fine. It's really whatever is easiest for you, the user. Again, it's your products, it's your stuff. So you've got to do what's best for you. I personally would go onto a hard drive. If you are going to try a cloud-based solution, I do recommend Google Photos. That's usually the easiest and the most convenient. If you have a Gmail account, that'll be available via your Gmail account. And it makes it super easy to retrieve and get all your information off of there. If you don't, a lot of companies and works use Microsoft Office for their photo, or use Microsoft Office for Outlook for their email. You have OneDrive that'll be available to you. And then last but not least is a big popular one is the Adobe Creative Cloud. Great for those who are photo editing or video editing. Do you use Premiere or you use Photoshop or InDesign or any of those features? You have a cloud-based solution that's available to you via the Adobe Creative Cloud. So let's go through a tour of your device. This is where I like to break down individual devices and kind of just go through what device does what and why that should matter to you, the user. This is now where we start talking about individual devices. This is more of a blanketed kind of thing where we look at the device in a general sense, see what features are available, button layouts, stuff like that, and kind of talk about why you might be interested in this. If anybody has questions while I'm talking, this is a great time to chat, ask a question on a product, and I'll do my best to answer it live for you. So without further ado, let's start with our GoPro action cameras. So for the GoPro itself, it's going to have two buttons. Those two buttons are going to be the main pieces to what else we're using. So the two buttons are mainly going to be the capture button. That's the top button. The top button is then going to take a video or take a photo or start and stop the video. This is the way that we're going to basically be starting the play pause button or the photo capture button. So that's an important one. The power button is usually on the side of the unit, and the power button has dual function. So by holding this button down, you're going to power the unit on and off. But by pressing this button once, you can toggle between things like time-lapse, photo, video. This is a great way of skipping and making sure you're on the correct setting. Video should be symbolized by some form of camera. The photo usually is a little photo icon of some sort. And then time-lapse will usually either show something that has like an infinity symbol or a sped up symbol, but it'll be a way to show you that this video is going to be used for, things like time-lapse. If you want to show it at the sunset and the sunset takes 2 hours to go, then the time-lapse is perfect for something like that because it will conserve on battery life while delivering you a really cool video of whatever it is that you're trying to get. Alright, there's something about them of it, but your screen is really everything on these devices. Your screen is your way of toggling between a lot of different features on this that aren't accessible through those two buttons. So this is a list of what it can control. Frames per second, if we're shooting a 4K video, maybe we don't need to shoot at 60 frames a second to reduce our battery life. Maybe we're just doing a standard video, so 30 frames would suffice. Angle and lens millimeter size. For example, if you're shooting on GoPro, you'll be able to select between wide and then 16 to 34 millimeters as that wide angle viewing angle. Video quality. Are you shooting HD, 2.7, or 4K video? Hindsight is you're focusing on the camera itself. This is the camera's ability to focus in on your subject matters. It will use more battery, but it is a great feature to have so you keep people in focus as you're recording. Hyper smooth is on there. That's the stability of the camera. The front screen will show your video duration during a selfie mode so you can see what you're recording. So if you're recording yourself, you flip the camera around to record yourself. There should be a little front screen on there which will clearly indicate exactly what you're seeing as you're recording. Those modes that you can then select through, so photo, that allows you to capture stills and frames rather than take video. Time lapse, turn the video on and will capture video over a duration of time. Then it will compress the video, then play that video over a period of time, which is within seconds or minutes. So the coolest part about time-lapse is as you're recording, you're able to then take the video and it'll either play in a few seconds or in a minute or two, and it'll show an entire sunset or cars driving on the expressway zipping past you. Really anything that can be affected by time and change, that's what a time-lapse video is really there for. It's really cool what you can get out of it, and it'll just add a little bit more fun to your videos. And then video in general, you can record video for whatever duration you want, with whatever quality you want, and things like hyper smooth or hindsight can all be turned on and enabled, making just a better video for the end use. Here's some examples of what GoPro can offer, action cameras in general can offer. They're durable, they're waterproof, they can take a beating, they have good frames per second, they offer you, the user, really cool looking videos, and this is just something else extra that you can add on to whatever it is you're already doing. Not to say this is going to replace your 4K best quality camera that you own, but this really could make the difference of adding just a little extra pizzazz, if you will, to whatever the content that you're creating is. So why do we use an action camera? Part of the reason I think we use action cameras is because of how durable they are. Well, like the little clips we had earlier, they can take a beating, they can get thrown in the mud, they can get hit. The cameras offer a really durable body that also is waterproof. And with that being said, for kids, for high schoolers, for adults who like action sports, for really anybody who's rough on their devices, this gives you the ability to be as rough as you want and still maintain all of the best features about these cameras. So I think it's really a cool and nice option as well. Things like, first-person view, or having the ability to put your camera on, objects that you might not have been able to get a real big, thick, heavy camera on, like your dog, for example, are all possible with these. Being able to mount this on your chest and go biking in the mountains, or put this on your dog's back and have them run around the beach and you get the floppy ears while they're running. Those are features that, again, you wouldn't be able to get on a standard camera without having some sort of rig, or without necessarily hurting or maybe endangering other animals or beings. This really gives you the option to play and have a little bit of fun in a unique perspective. So besides being durable and flexible with what you can and can't do with it, it offers a really unique view that you probably wouldn't be able to get with your standard camera. So adding an action camera onto your arsenal can give you a variety of different benefits, but also is going to put you in a position where you're not damaging things like your precious camera gear, both mirrorless or DSLR. Drones. Now, drones are some of my favorite things to talk about because I think it's a very unique concept. Drones have been out for a while now, probably the better half of a decade. However, the drone's ability to become better at recording, to have greater flight distances, to have greater flight times, all of that's been really worked on and updated within the last couple of years, and they've really made huge strides in giving us a quality product that we can use for a lot of different reasons. So to start, there's drone types. Now the main drone we're looking at is the quadcopter. However, there are a few other ones to talk about. Single rotor, that looks like your typical helicopter. You're not going to really get one of these as a cinematic drone, but these will be fun drones that you can use for more of that first-person experience of what is it like to fly a helicopter. Quadcopters, like I said, are the most popular style of drone, and that's sold on a consumer level. FPV drones are going to require goggles to fly, but typically only come as a quadcopter. And FPV drones are really great for people who want to feel like a pilot while they're flying. They require you to fly with goggles, but it makes you feel like you're in the driver's seat of the drone that you're using. From that being said, quadcopters are the only way that you'll really see those. Newest product right now for that would be something like the Avata 2 that just recently came out about a week or so ago. Cinematic drones, they fly also as quadcopters, and they have a high quality camera and tracking feature involved with them. So they're really awesome products that you can use to get really amazing video, typically used as professional based cameras, something to really add to your camera arsenal, but to really give you just better video quality while almost being at the professional level. Hexacopters, that's the next step after then quadcopters. That's a 6-bladed copter. That's going to be the greatest for filming and stability in the air. This is really mainly going to be for the people who are making professional movies. Way back in the day, if you had a scene where it was flying of some sort, usually it was done with a helicopter and they would put a really heavy camera on there. Nowadays, they have drone pilots that can fly really expensive and huge drones that then also now have the camera equipment kind of glued on top there. Great if that's something that you can afford, great if that's your industry, but I would say for the majority of people out there, the quadcopter is going to be your main thing that you're using. And then last but not least is the fixed wing rotor. It's more of a plane experience, great for people who want less of a copter experience and more of a plane flying experience. Again, not going to be for really filming, but more so just for fun. Makes you feel like you're flying an airplane. Controllers. So you're going to see a couple different types of controllers out there, but the two main types are going to be your RC controller, which has a built-in screen, and then it's going to be your standard remote controller, which less of a screen on there, and that's where then your phone is going to be a part of it. Again, great options for people who are trying to get into the drone flying industry and they're trying to learn a little bit more. Now, I personally think the one with the screen on there is the better way to go. You don't have to worry about your phone's battery life, you don't have to worry about charging your device, and you don't have to worry about your phone being involved with the controller. However, the drone that uses your phone, or the controller that uses your phone, I should say, does come in at a cheaper price. Usually it's anywhere between $300 and $400 cheaper when you go with the one without the screen built into it. However, if you can't get the one with the screen built into it, I don't think you'll regret it. Just more ease of use, and again, you don't have to involve your phone, which is great. Now, the controller is going to control a few different things, funny enough, and they're going to have a variety of different features on there. So the drone sticks, or the controller sticks, are real simple. One joystick will control your up and down movement, as well as rotation. The other will control front and backwards and side to side movement. Again, main things you're using to control and fly your drone are going to be those sticks. Antennas. Point these outwards. These are the reconnection, or these are the connection point between your drone and the controller. So as you're flying, if you have antennas that are involved with your controller, aim those outwards, and that's how they're going to connect between the drone and that controller. Your gimbal dial. So that's a rotational control over the drone's camera. That can then maybe help you with zoom. That could also reposition your gimbal so that way it's focusing where you want it to. But really nice, really important feature. Record button, also your picture button. Clicking this will record or take a picture. Now you have a focus and shutter control on there. This is then going to give you the ability to refocus while you're filming or shooting, or give you control over the speed at which the shutter is firing. A lot of the times this is done on the screen. You're able to then set the control on that, and then when you go to use the feature or function, it gives you ability to then rotate between the different options. And then an RTH button, which I think is really important. That's the return to home button. Gives you the ability to send the drone back to the place it took off from. Do not use this if you're on a moving object. If you're on a moving object like a boat or a motorcycle or a car, and you hit the return to home button, it's going to return to where it took off from. So not a great option when you're on a boat, because then it could get real close to water, and if it does, if a wave takes over your drone, I will admit, while the drone can get rained or snowed on a little bit, it can't really get submerged underwater, so keep that in mind. Now, two important things to remember with the drones. Geofencing. It's a virtual wall. The drone will not allow you to push forward or fly in this area. Typically, the fencing exists by airports, government buildings, national parks, and certain cities and properties. This is a protection thing for you, the user of the drone. If you're caught flying in an area that you're not supposed to be flying in, some people can get past those controls. Fines can be anywhere up to and including $500 all the way up to $10,000, and can include 10 years in jail. So it's important to remember where, and just keep it's important to remember where and when you're flying, and then also to just keep in mind that there are rules and regulations over these things. It's really just not meant to be, all fun and games all the way through. There can be legal repercussions if you're caught flying in areas you're not supposed to be. And I talked a little bit about this already, but phone versus pro controller. So a controller that uses the phone and a controller that has the screen built in. The drone will require some form of screen to be used when flying. This not only gives you the ability to see the video, but it also gives you the ability to control and set different things on there. For example, if you connect your phone to the controller, then you have the screen built on there. If you're using a Pro controller or RC controller, that'll have the screen built into it already. Everything shows up on the screen, and that screen, similar to the GoPros and action cameras, gives you the ability to switch between different features on there. So on the screen itself, what you're going to see is distance from you and drone. This can include altitude of how far away the drone is or how high the drone is, and altitude of drone too as well, so that's important. So distance between you and the drone, how far away the drone is, plus altitude. This gives you the ability to switch between photo and video, so you can toggle between taking a picture, taking that video. Map with geofencing and surrounding area. This will tell you if there's any restrictions to where you're flying and what you need to know. For example, you might be in an area that says you can't go over 400 meters. You might be in another area that tells you, you're not allowed to fly within X amount of feet of whatever the location is because it's a protected building or establishment. So those are all things that you'd see with geo mapping. Active track, cancel, and start. So depending on your drone, if you have one that has sensors on the inside of it, you can then use those sensors to avoid obstacles. With that being said, if you set the drone to follow me, the drone will actually fly by itself and follow whatever it's being asked to do. So if it's myself and I'm going for a jog, I can set the drone to follow me as I run. If it sees a tree branch is coming, it will avoid the tree branch and keep me in focus, which I think is a really cool feature. Return to home, RTH, we talked about that already. That's its ability to return from where it took off. And then immediate land. Immediate land will literally drop it from wherever it's at right in front of you and bring it down to the floor. Great if you're in an area that's a little bit tricky or you're just done with flying for the day and the drone's right above you. Press immediate land, it'll lower itself down slowly but surely, and then it will land. Because we're getting into drones, it's important that we understand permits and the FAA. The FAA is the Federal Aviation Association, and no matter what you've read in local news or the newspapers or TV, drones are controlled by the federal government, meaning that your local government and state government really don't have much dictation over what you can and can't do with. However, the Federal Aviation Association has detailed and outlined what exactly you're allowed to do with the drones and best practices. I highly recommend you take a look at their website before purchasing a drone, or even if you have a drone, it doesn't hurt to refresh it up and make sure that you yourself are protecting you against any of the crazies in the world that don't like these things, or that just, you might have questions on. There are two types of permits you can really purchase with drones. I'm sure there are other ones, but these are the two most important. So first and foremost is going to be registering your drone. If your drone is under 249 grams, you do not need any kind of permit unless you are doing commercial work for business or pay. And if you're questioning whether or not you're doing commercial work for business or pay, the question that I ask customers is, if you are supposed to do a video, let's say it's for a charity event or something else, are you making that video for yourself or for a collective of some sort? Are you going to be using your own content and creation to then, just show off your work, or are you doing this for business, money, or because someone asked you to? If you answer yes to any of those, then you should get the Part 107, so you protect yourself. For a lot of companies, it would be required. However, though, it really comes down to the legality of it. What the Part 107 will do, well, first off, registering your drone, this is not the Part 107. This is just your standard registration. If it's over 249 grams, you must register. If it's less than 249 grams, the option is up to you. It is a $5 permit and includes a course and information needed that needed to be read. Once you have read it after completion, you must clearly write out the permit number on the physical drone. This is important for many reasons, but basically if you're ever stopped by law enforcement or by anybody from the government and they want to check to make sure that you're registered and following the rules you're supposed to, when they see that permit number is written on there, they can run the numbers and they can ensure that you are up to date and up to snot with everything that the government's asking you to be about when it comes to drones. Now again, if it's under 249 grams, you don't have to do this. if you are doing work for business, pay, commercial, or nonprofit, or any type of work that's not for you, it's for another person, then you're going to need that Part 107. The Part 107 is you pay $175, you take a course on flying. After completion, you can now do commercial or business-based work with your drone. The reason this is so important is that it teaches you safety and other huge pieces of information that you'll need for legality's sake to protect you, the drone flyer. If you're flying above a crowd of people and you accidentally crash, you're protected under Part 107. But if you don't have Part 107 and you're doing this, now you're in the legal zone and you yourself can get into a lot of trouble when it comes to flying the drone. It's important. If you're doing business work or commercial work and you are in that ballpark, then you need to do your Part 107. Here's some images and videos of what drones can do. Again, on the top left corner, you have the active track feature, which I think is one of the coolest ones. You can get these beautiful spiraling these beautiful kind of over-the-top views of cities or landscapes, which I think are really cool. And the most important thing with all of this is that you get a brand new perspective on the whole thing, right? When it comes to using drones in general, I think that's the next slide that I have. Why we use a drone is really to reach new heights. It's to get pictures or videos in a way that we never would have been able to before. When you think about it in movies or anything else, Jurassic Park is the one that comes to my mind. When they showed the islands off in Jurassic Park, those were filmed in the 90s before drones really were that popular and useful, especially in that filming age. That would have been done with a helicopter pilot using very expensive gear. Nowadays, they can use a drone of some sort, a hexacopter, if you will, throw on a really awesome, expensive camera rig, and get videos and clips unseen before. I mean, it's incredible with what you're able to do. Larger than life, group photos are an ease now. Nobody has to be behind the camera. You really just get to add a new level of professionalism to your equipment. And for those that are just trying to, spread the love between their camera gear and form and functionality, having drones are one of the most popular things nowadays for that exact type of thing. So definitely highly would recommend a drone of some sort to add to your arsenal. They're really cool, they're really useful, and they do a lot of fun stuff. So definitely would recommend it. Camcorders. This one doesn't have the most information. Same thing with our next one, the 360 cameras. However, camcorders are still very popular. They're still used a lot. Even though we have dedicated, mirrorless and DSLR cameras that can shoot 4K video with internal stabilization, there is something to be said about a camera that just focuses in on camera shooting or video shots with that high cinematic quality. Current moment, Sony is going to be the main brand that we're looking at. They have their Handycam series, which is one of the most popular that you can get. It's great for people who don't want to do regular photo. They want to mainly do video. Camcorders are going to have a various amount of controls, but these are going to be the main points that we want to look at. Your power button toggles on and off. Your record button starts the video recording or stops your video recording. Zoom toggle allows you to zoom in and out on a subject, whether that be to get a wide angle or to get a tighter focus. Photo button lets us switch between photo and video. Our focus knob or dial is our ability to make sure that whatever we're pointing the camera at, we can focus on it, whether that be something in the background or whether that be something in the foreground. Autofocus is a great tool, but when it comes to video, we should be practicing or using at least the manual focus while we're doing this. That's going to ensure that if somebody walks in front of our camera, we don't lose focus from whatever it is that we were focusing on previously. Our iris or aperture control is going to be a big one. This is going to be the camera's ability to do the foreground and background separation that we're looking for. Shutter speed is that ability for the shutter to open and close at a speed at which we're trying to get crisp or quality or high quality. If we have something that's in great motion, let's say a basketball player running up and down the court, then we're going to want to make sure that our shutter speed is faster, a higher number. If we have something that's moving extremely slow and we want to get the detail and the maturity of that, then we probably want to use a slower shutter speed to make sure we get a slow video. Again, it's all things to play with, but shutter speed is a big portion of how we're controlling the camcorder's crispness, if you will, quality. White balance, depending on the color of white that we have. If we have an overcast day, a sunny day, we have fluorescent lighting, we have incandescent lighting, anything like that, maybe we are in a club with multi-lights flashing everywhere. Those are the kind of things that really do control the camera, and the white balance does need to be adjusted. We can keep the camera on auto white balance, but there's a lot of ways that we can set and tone our camera to give us the best video based on what we want. And then playback controls are probably the last thing. Just like your old handy camera that maybe your parents had in the 80s or the 60s where you could plug it into the TV, sorry, not the 60s, but 80s and 90s, if you will, where you could plug your camcorder into the TV and hit the playback button and see what you already made. Playback controls work very similar on these camcorders, and it is something that you'll see. Important settings that we want to look at the camcorders. While they are pretty easy to use, things that we should be playing with as soon as we get our camcorder, first and foremost, video quality. Setting your camera for HD or 4K or other qualities that your camera is capable of. Do the video that works best for you. If you're shooting something for Instagram, you probably don't need 4K. HD is probably going to be more than enough. But if you're shooting something for YouTube or your website, or maybe something that's going to go in a short film expose or something in those manners, 4K is probably going to be the one you want to go with to give yourself the best quality. Setting image stabilization. So setting your camera to have image stabilization on will ensure you have a non-shaky video. This will also reduce the battery life slightly. However, if you're using things like tripods or monopods or video pods, then you don't necessarily need to keep it on, but it is a really good feature to have so you don't have a shaky camera. Face detection. Most cameras will have an auto face detection, which depending on what you're filming, can keep humans in focus. It's important to remember that it's humans. Some of the higher end cameras that you see nowadays that Sony and Nikon makes do offer human and animal tracking, which I think is great. Frame rate, the rate at which you're capturing frames for your video. Lesser rate, better for simple or standard videos. Faster rate, better for sports, action, and slow-mo. Very similar to when we're talking about our shutter speed. This is where frame rate also plays a factor. If we're doing things that are doing slow-mo, more frames the better. If we're doing things that aren't necessarily slow-mo, it's a standard video, lesser rate or less frames, you're fine. Now, bitrate is the next one. This is where it starts to get more complex, but setting this helps your camera take in information. The higher the bitrate, the more information your camera is taking in. The less of the bitrate, or the lower of a bitrate, the less it's taking in. Where this is important is when we are looking at things like bitrate, we're keeping in mind things for editing, for after. If we're not editing and we're not really worried about that portion, then we probably don't need a high bitrate. But if we're concerned about color and making sure that we set our color correct, then we want a high bit rate so we have more to play with on the back end. And then exposure control. Controls the darkness and lightness of your video. Exposure compensation would be the next thing that's very similar to this on our cameras. That's where then we're controlling at which rate that we're getting our exposure. Again, it's very easy to make lighter things darker. It's hard to make darker things lighter. So keep that in mind as you're recording. It's easier if we have a light video to then go back in and darken up parts of it than it is for us to have a super dark video and make it lighter. It just won't look as crisp. It'll look more washed out or blurred, if you will. Why do we use camcorders? I use these couple images on here to kind of explain it. There's a lot of reasons why we might not want to get a camcorder. However, when you think about it, camcorders are designed to be cinematic. So when you have something like the top right corner or the bottom left corner, you can get really cinematic shots while offering yourself the ability to just focus on video. There are abilities to use these for photo. However, it's a secondary feature that's given to you as a user for the primary use, though, that you're using for video. They're portable, they're easy to use. On the top left corner, we can see the hand going through the grip on there. It just keeps it in hand, keeps it simple, easy to use, so that way we're not fighting like we would with a larger camera setup. And if we do need a larger camera setup, something like the bottom left or bottom right picture shows off all the accessories. We can add microphones, we can add grips, we can add lens hoods, we can add filter hoods. There's so many different little pieces that we can add on to our camcorder to really beef it up and make it feel more professional in nature. So while they can be super simple, they can also be extremely complex and add a whole range of use for us as a photographer or a cinematographer. Insta360 cameras, or 360 cameras. Those are going to be some of the most popular new cameras that are on the market right now. Insta360 being the main brand of these cameras, and brands like GoPro making the 360 Max, which is still a very popular model. Maybe not as popular as the Insta360s, but still very cool. Why do we like a 360 camera? Well, the most simple way I can say this is that it gives the user the ability to shoot first, think, and refocus later. It works and functions like all action cameras. It's waterproof for the most part. They're durable. They can get banged around. Except this one will offer two 180-degree firing cameras. Now it's cool because you can either fire one of the lenses at one time to just do one simple video, or you can fire both. Gives you the option to play with that. All 360 cameras, whether it's GoPro or Insta360, have proprietary technology using AI that'll hide or make the selfie stick you're using look invisible. Creates a third-person view unlike other cameras. So what's really cool with GoPro and some of the other ones is that you can mount the camera on your chest or on your head. This one you can do something similar. However, you can really create a third-person view that you probably wouldn't be able to get out of any other camera, and I think that's super unique to something like Insta360. Videos can be viewed in their entirety with a VR headset, so when you've got the headset on and you're watching the video, you can move around and reposition your view and really see everything around you, which I think is really cool, and just again, another unique feature. And they're small, they're compact, they're durable. Very similar to your GoPros, your Insta cameras. Insta360 or 360 cameras can really offer you, the user, the ability to have something that's durable, that doesn't get damaged easily, but then that'll offer you a really cool, unique video experience. Something like this is a great example. The app on the top left corner there will show you that you can reposition and use your finger so simply to just move yourself around. You give yourself this smaller or larger than life appearance like you see on the right side, where you can zoom in and reposition to get what you're looking for, but then at the same time too, you can make your surroundings feel much smaller to you, the user. But I think my favorite feature in there is the bottom portion, the app that comes along. Whether you're using GoPro or you're using something like the Insta360 camera, the ability for you to reposition your video and have fun with it, but then edit it all at the touch of a finger and a go, is really easy. So for the content creator who's just trying to get involved, doesn't have time to do things at home, wants to have the ease of doing it all on their phone in one go, something like one of these cameras would really offer you, the user, that flexibility that a lot of people are looking for. So tons of really big pluses or advantages with this camera. Why would we want to use 360 cameras? I really would say that it's for the user who wants to do what their motto is. Shoot first, think later. The ability to focus in and have fun with the camera while not sacrificing the quality of photo or video, but not also sacrificing that kind of sanity that goes into it, is a really awesome thing to have. You don't have to do too much effort in the initial filming process. It's the after process of then going through and changing and playing with the content that's really awesome and unique for the user. 360 cameras are also just super compact, they're portable, they're easy, they don't require a lot of maintenance overall, and the last thing I would say with them too is that they're very new and emerging. 360 cameras have probably only been around for maybe 4 or 5 years now, and since their creation they have been slowly but surely becoming more and more popular. More internet people are using them, more videographers are using them, people who are just trying to add something fun and unique to their camera experience, like these 360 cameras for the wide features and variety of features that they can really allow you, the user, to use. And that is all I have for you guys. So I kept it around that hour time for us. Next week is the beginner camera class. That's where we're going to be talking about our entry into cameras. So we'll be repeating now the schedule from last month. So next week is the first Thursday of May, which is going to be May 2nd. So May 2nd next week, we're going to have our intro to camera class, and then we start up the schedule from the beginning again. My phone number, email are there for y'all. If you ever have any questions, comments, or concerns, maybe you don't want to chat on the live video right now, but maybe you want to ask later on, by all means, call me, email me, whatever's easier for you, and I can then kind of help you out, guide you from there. I'm off on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and usually I tell customers, email me. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'll respond pretty quickly. But if you want to call, leave me a message or whatnot, then I can get back to you as soon as possible on whatever it is you're looking to do. So, a few of you guys are still on watching right now, so I'll leave this running. If you guys have any questions or comments for me, now is the time to ask. I'll stay for a few more minutes, and then from there I'll get out of here. So, thanks everybody for coming, and yeah, I'll give you a few minutes to, if you got any questions. Alright everybody, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions for me, so I will sign off for today. Thanks everybody for joining. As always, I'm happy to teach you guys what I can. We'll be here next week for our intro to camera class, where we'll talk about the beginning steps of getting into mirrorless or DSLR. As always, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can call or email me. If not, you can call into the store, ask for anybody in our small electronics department, and we're all super knowledgeable about cameras, shooting, and other gear that you might be interested in. So, as always, guys, keep taking pictures, keep snapping.